Solace and Sanctuary by Ignium807. Chapter 4. Jaskier pulls his coat in closer around him as he makes his way up the long drive to his manor. True winter is still a week or two away, but it's already cold enough in Lettenhove to freeze his balls off. He spares a moment to regret never getting his own horse. It's not a problem when he's with one of his witchers. They've warmed up enough to let him ride with them when he needs. But every time they're separated, he realizes anew just how much he hates traveling long distances on foot. The cold only makes it worse. He notes with pleasure that the manor is as well kept as ever. Better, in fact. That outside is immaculate, paint clean and lawn orderly. A large pile of firewood is visible along the side of the great house, meaning his servants are well stocked for the cold nights to come. It warms his heart to see. Leo doesn't know he's coming home for the winter. Nor does he know that Jaskier will soon be joined by the witchers he has heard so much about. Jaskier doesn't expect that to be a problem. Leo is an old-fashioned man, a traditionalist in many ways, but he has a kind heart. He'll undoubtedly come to love Geralt, Lambert, and Eskel as much as Jaskier does. A grin spreads across his face as Jaskier climbs the short flight of steps to knock on the door. It's more of a courtesy than anything. He doesn't expect Leo to come running quite yet. He can let himself in. One great push sends the pair of double doors swinging open. They part in unison, letting a blast of cool air into the manor and providing a suitably dramatic entrance for a bard of Jaskier's status. He steps into his foyer and breathes in deep. For all he loves the road, and he does. He loves it to pieces. It's nice to be back home. Jaskier calls out Leo's name as he heads toward the main sitting room, eager to thaw out in front of a fire. He sheds his coat as he goes, pulling off all his winter gear until he's standing in a pair of blue traveling silks, his lute in one hand and his pack of medicines and basic supplies in the other. There is someone in the sitting room when he bursts through the doors, but it isn't his butler. This man is much larger, much balder, and equipped with far more knives than Leo would ever be. He has a scar across his head and a snake medallion at his neck. A witcher! Lord Julian is nothing like what Letho expected. He's younger, for one thing. Brighter. There's a light dusting of snow in his tousled hair, and he's covered from head to toe in flashy, expensive, entirely impractical silk. He stands in the doorway with an almost comical expression of surprise, eyes wide and blinking in shock, a lute dangling dangerously from the lax fingers of one hand. Julian says, his voice high and lilting. Hello? Hello. Julian steps fully into the room and drops his bags on the couch opposite Letho. He turns to the witcher with his brows drawn together and meets his eyes head-on. Sorry, he says with a light shake of his head, but who are you? Letho stares him down. Silence stretches between them for far longer than should be comfortable, but Julian doesn't seem to mind. Geralt must have acclimated him well to extended silence. Finally, Julian's fingers start to twitch at his sides and Letho fights down a surge of amusement. Letho of Gullet, he says. In the decades he has walked the earth, Letho has received many reactions from people hearing his name for the first time. Those who have not heard of him tend to smile politely and forget it soon after. Those who know his name, or rather his reputation, either run in fear or offer him a job. This man does neither. Julian's eyes light up with unrestrained glee, and he bounces forward to clasp one of Letho's hands. Letho starts at the contact, but does not pull away, too swept up by the fascination in Julian's face to bother thinking about anything else. You're the Kingslayer, Julian says. He pulls his hand away and runs it distractedly through his hair, dislodging the last few flakes of snow as he does. I've heard so much about you. Decades of betrayals and regicide of the guilty and innocent all dead by his hand flash behind Letho's eyes. He is not ashamed of the choices he has made. While some may call him evil, he thinks of himself as practical. Every man he ever killed died for a reason, innocent or not. Julian doesn't give him time to respond. He stands just a few inches closer than most humans would dare, staring with unabashed curiosity. You must have so many stories. I've heard talk of you. Of course, it is my duty as a bard to know these things, but I never thought I'd have the opportunity to... His sentence cuts off and he steps back, blinking wildly as he runs his eyes from Letho's head to his feet. The gaze is burning while it lasts, but soon enough Julian is turning to take in the rest of the room, his expression uncomprehending as he takes in the details of his own sitting room. He wrinkles his nose at the blazing fire and snaps his eyes back to Lethos. "What are you doing in my house?" Julian doesn't know. He doesn't know. And if he doesn't know about Lethos staying the winter, then he won't know about the rest. Not the servant's hospitality, not the rumors, not the pile of gifts squirreled away somewhere, and certainly not the inconsistent yet incredibly steady procession of witchers who have taken to using his manor as a home base. It's a lot to explain, and Lethos is not a man of many words. "Wintering here," he answers, because it's true. Julian's mouth drops open, then closes with a plop, then opens again. Leo isn't sure what reaction he's expecting. A scolding, probably, filled with indignation and understandable confusion. Perhaps a punch in the nuts. Leo doesn't usually anticipate violence from humans, but he's alone and barely armed, and this man looks bold enough to do it. Not that he could win that fight, it just looks like he might try. "Well," Julian says, and Leo braces himself for a punch. "All right then." He doesn't breathe. He doesn't say a word. He doesn't move. All Lethal can do is stare at Julian, and all Julian can do is stare back, until a log in the fire gives a loud pop and sends up sparks, shattering the moment into 1,000 tiny pieces. "I assume you've got Leo's permission, then. Probably sat you down with a cup of lavender tea and gave you the lay of the land, where to go, who not to mess with, no swords on the nice couches and all that." Letho can only nod. Such a conversation did occur, though it was several months prior to now, after Letho's first purposeful stop in Lettenhove. "Jasmine," he says. Julian raises an eyebrow at him. "Sorry?" "The tea," Letho explains. "It wasn't lavender. It was jasmine." "Oh." Julian takes a second to process that before his face goes soft with longing. "Jasmine tea sounds lovely right about now. I haven't had a proper hot meal in days, would you believe it? Tracked her all the way from Temeria to beat the snows, didn't have time to stop anyone nice." He shoots Leo an empathetic look that sets the witcher completely off balance. "I'm sure you can relate. The path is hard and all that." Leo was about to respond when a polite cough from the doorway makes both men turn. Leo stands just beyond the threshold, impeccably put together as always, his face slightly pale when he realizes that Julian ran into Leo before he had the opportunity to explain anything. "My lord." He sweeps into a low bow, eyes trained respectfully on the floor. "Leo!" Julian crosses to him in 2 great strides and sweeps the butler into a hug. Tension bleeds out of his shoulders and he slumps forward against his servant, eyes closed as though all the horrors in the world are in the room with them just beyond the circle of Leo's arms. "It has been a long year, my friend." "It has," the older man agrees. He steps back to give Julian a once-over. "You seem well, my lord." "I am well, lean and mean and blissfully happy. Oh, the tales I will spin you. But first," he looks to Letho and claps his hands once as though a decision has been made. "Drinks, hot drinks, please, because I have been traveling in far too little clothing for far too long. Food, too, if it isn't too much to ask of cook so late at night." Julian grins at the both of them. "You've been busy in my absence, Leo. I insist you tell me everything." Much later, when the 3 men have consumed enough food for 10 and at least 2 bottles of wine, Leo goes to bed. He bows goodnight to Julian and nods to Letho, leaving his lord and the witcher to talk amongst themselves. Jaskier, for his part, is having a grand old time. The knowledge of what his servants have been up to for the past year has settled like a new cloak over his shoulders as they ate. His initial shock has faded away. In its place burns fierce pride. Geralt and the others are a few days behind him, and Jaskier cannot wait to show them what his people have built. Leo, unsurprisingly, is not one for idle chatter. He grunts and swears in a way that reminds Jaskier of his first days on the road with Geralt. Punch first, ask questions later. But he is kind enough to Leo, and like every witcher Jaskier has met thus far, he is deeply, utterly starved for affection. He looks at Jaskier like a threat. Jaskier is sure he would feel more comfortable with a blade pointed at his throat than he is with casual kindness. He and Leo seem to have built something of a friendship, and Jasker's arrival has upset the balance of things. No doubt Letho is waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Jaskier to pull out the knife he's been hiding and take back all of Leo's pretty promises. Jaskier wonders how long it will take to dissuade him of that notion. Convincing Geralt that he wasn't one for backstabbing took months. Lambert and Eskel were easier, but Jaskier thinks that their inherent trust in Geralt's judgment is to credit for how quickly they warmed to him. Letho has no such connection. He sees Jaskier as an unknown variable, and Jaskier knows from experience that the only way to knock down a Witcher's defenses is with time, determination, and an ocean's worth of stubbornness. He smiles to himself as he takes a sip of wine. Time, determination, and stubbornness. 3 things an immortal bard has in spades. You said you were wintering here, he says. You're welcome, of course, but might I ask why? Letho's gaze is suspicious. Jaskier meets it with a grin. Why do you care? The Witcher demands. Well, I know the wolf school has Kaer Morhen. I figured Viper would have something similar. So I'm curious how you ended up in Lettenhove of all places. I had nowhere else to go, Letho says. It is both an honest answer and an avoidance. He has revealed nothing about his Witcher school while revealing something personal and painful about himself. Jaskier knows it's the kind of line that tends to end conversations. No doubt it is meant to end this one, but Jaskier has never known how to take a hint and he isn't about to start now. Burned a lot of bridges, have you? I know the feeling. Letho's gaze is acidic. Don't compare us, Bard. You have no idea who I am. Letho of Galette. Jaskier shoots back. The famed Kingslayer. I know your deeds. I know the whispers that follow at your heels. I know the fear that circles through a court when you're in town, how kings raise their guard and ladies clutch their purses tighter. He pauses his tirade for another sip of wine, steadying himself. And I know that most of it is bullshit. Bullshit, Letho echoes. You're the bigger idiot than you seem if you don't believe the rumors you hear. I'm no Geralt, Bard. Whatever sweet ideas you have in your head about witchers are wrong. It's all true, then? Jaskier lets bitterness seep in alongside the disbelief in his voice. You're an unfeeling, uncaring beast like all the stories say you are. I've killed people, Letho grits out. Innocents. Jaskier waves a hand. We've all killed people. You haven't. You have no idea who I am. You've killed a man? Letho asks with disbelief. Several, Jaskier admits. Bandits and enchanted townsfolk alike, in self-defense. Yes, but I've killed all the same. No amount of rationalization will change the fact that I took a life, and my reasons don't make my actions any better than yours. I slit a man's throat while he slept. Did you do it without reason? Jaskier leans forward in his seat and rests his arms on his knees. Can you look me in the eye and tell me you killed him in cold blood for nothing but your own benefit? He doesn't give Letho time to answer. And even if you did, it doesn't make you a beast. I travelled with a man called the Butcher of Blaviken for fuck's sake. I know the difference between monsters and men. Monsters don't feel remorse, yet here you sit telling me your mistakes as if I can absolve you. He is at least 5 feet away from the Witcher, but somehow Jaskier still manages to crowd him, to loom into his space and pick up his air. Jaskier sets his wine down and leans the rest of his weight on his forearms, eyes locking on Letho's. Name your sins, he says. They will not outnumber my own. Letho's gaze slides to the side, telling Jaskier all he needs to know. I've stolen, the Witcher says, taken down convoys, stripped them bare, and left their owners to fend for themselves on the road. I've slept with more married women than I can count, Jaskier counters. Some men, too, though the wives are less likely to come at me with pitchforks than the husbands are. I have broken nearly every oath I ever made, lied to men's faces, and turned on them when it suited me. Jaskier schools his face into neutrality. It is clear that his betrayals weigh heavily on Letho's mind. The sin Jaskier offers up must respond in kind. My mother lay on her deathbed for months, and I did not return to her. I ignored her letters. I steered Geralt away from Carrick on our travels to let her die here. Alone. That gets Letho's attention. Jaskier can tell he's curious, can tell he wants to ask why. He braces himself for the inevitable question. I shot down a bird for singing too loud once. Jaskier can't help his bark of laughter. It's a strange confession, said with a dry, slightly mocking tone that Jaskier has come to associate with a Witcher doing his best to tell a joke. Grateful for the attempt at levity, he picks up on the game and fires back.
I tried to use a gin wish to kill one of my rivals. The dreaded Valdo Marks made the bastard's dick shrivel up and fall off.
It's Letho's turn to laugh now, a sound only half human and definitely disused. I had a witch curse a lord's son into only talking in riddles. Drove the court half mad. Mirth gleams in Jaskier's eyes.
Clever! I'd get Yennefer to do the same with Geralt, but I'm afraid I wouldn't get laid for a month.
The mention of Geralt causes Letho's face to shutter closed. Jaskier notes the change in mood with trepidation, but he holds his tongue and waits for the Witcher to speak first. The White Wolf and I did not part as friends, Letho says.
I gathered as much. What happened?
Letho shakes his head. Too much history to recount, Bard. Suffice to say, he thinks I'm an immoral cunt, and I think he has a righteous stick up his ass so long it reaches his damn throat. Jaskier takes the imagery in stride. He's heard worse insults hurled at Geralt over the years.
It seems you're both wrong, then. You're hardly an immoral man, and the only thing up Geralt's ass these days is me.
And what the fuck do you know of my morals?
Letho spits. He has leaned forward as well, muscles rippling as he makes a subtle show of strength, invading Jaskier's face just as Jaskier did his. Plenty, Jaskier says. Though the two are nearly chest to chest, he does not back away. Leo trusts you, and I trust his judgment on such matters without question. But even if he were not here, I would know something of your morals.
Letho smiles in challenge.
Surely you've seen the town, Jaskier continues. You know Lettenhove is small, full of traders and farmers, not warriors. You know as well as I that no man within 10 miles could best you in a fight.
He spreads his arms wide to indicate the town.
A truly amoral man would kill the servants once they let you in, send a message to the townspeople that a new lord has taken up residence, slit my throat as soon as I walk in the door, stay here in the lap of luxury as long as you like, and slip away some morning without conflict or repercussions.
It would be easy, Letho agrees. Don't tempt me.
Do it then, Jaskier orders.
Do what?
Kill me.
Jaskier stands and takes a single step forward, bringing him fully into Letho's space. He isn't quite sure what he's doing, isn't sure what he hopes to gain by challenging a man capable of regicide, but something about it feels right.
I'm unarmed, he taunts, and I know you have at least one knife on you right now. Your boot, perhaps? Come on, show me.
Ever so slowly, Letho reaches down. He slides a dagger from its sheath in his boot, carefully concealed by the fall of his loose pants, and is met with a manic grin from the bard in front of him.
I was right,
Jaskier says gleefully.
You witches are always armed.
Before Letho can properly react, Jaskier reaches down, grabs a hold of his wrist, and moves them so the tip of Letho's dagger is nestled in the hollow of Jaskier's throat.
Go on, he urges. If you're such a beast, what's a puny little viscount to a predator like you, huh? Go on, Kingslayer. Kill me.
Were Letho a lesser man, his hand would shake. As it stands, he holds himself so perfectly still that one might mistake him for a statue. The dagger hovers a hair's breadth from Jaskier's skin, yet his breath does not change cadence, nor does his heartbeat race. He meets Letho's eyes with calm defiance and puts himself at the mercy of a killer. Letho lowers the blade.
That's what I thought, Jaskier breathes. You're no more of a monster than I am, Kingslayer. You just have a more interesting title.
With that, he backs away, completely drains his goblet of wine, and goes to bed. Letho stares after him for a long time.